and get started. Today's webinar is an introduction to Sulitest, and our presenter is Brooke Suter, who's working with Sulitest and has her own consulting group, Sustainable Leadership to Thrive. For the benefit of those who will be reviewing the recording later, I'll just read the short announcement that we posted. At the upcoming faculty conference in Pittsburgh, Brooke Suter will lead a hands-on workshop on Sulitest that will occur on the evening of Monday, June 25th. In advance of that workshop and for the broader SCC audience, Brooke agreed to lead this webinar to provide a summary of Sulitest.org elements in development, such as the collaborative platform, the validation assessment, local and global, modules, geographic and topical, the quiz, translations, and leadership and business model. Brooke will talk about the global network of researchers currently pursuing questions related to Sulitest. Brooke is, I think, uniquely positioned to report on progress and ongoing Sulitest activities. Brooke will also share the outcomes from the recent first Sulitest Global Assembly, which took place in Marseille, France. A little bit more about Brooke before handing it over to her to begin the presentation. As a state or national director for 20 years, Brooke has worked in 50 states and at the federal government level to build diverse coalitions, empower citizens, and lead adaptation of nationally precedent-setting environment and public health legislation, regulation, and incentive-based programs in the U.S. Currently, she is collaborating internationally on tools for informed public action on the UN's interrelated Sustainable Development Goals, gender, poverty, climate, and more, principally through Sulitest.org. She is supporting sustainability systems thinking across coursework, culture, and alumni at the Harvard Kennedy School. She's integrating MIT's Theory U into sustainability approaches, and she's launching Sustainable Leadership to Thrive to support both personal and professional sustainability practices. So Brooke will supplement her background information and I'm sure also talk about her status as a Guinness Book of World Records holder, which I'm interested in hearing. So with that, Brooke, the floor is now yours.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Ira. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Great. Well, thanks for that introduction. And given that we have limited time, I won't spend too much time on me, but now that you've queued that up. So I, see, I need to get my slide to move here. There we go. So as you know, I find it's helpful to know who you're talking with. So you've seen this big picture of my face already, but here it is again. I became involved with Sulitest after working for 20 plus years on the state and national level in the United States on environment public health policy, and then going to the Harvard Kennedy School. And there I was really looking for some benchmarking tools around sustainability, and was exposed to Sulitest and tried it out and had some thoughts and comments for the folks developing the tools, and a really wonderful collaboration has been taking place for over a year now. So I'm currently acting as the strategic advisor for Sulitest. I'm also an examiner. Let's see, the Guinness Book of World Records holder was in support of my godson, who's special needs, and wanted to participate in a trombone event at National Park in Washington, D.C. And so we are part of, I can't remember the number, a few hundred people who, it's the most number of musicians to play the same song at the same time in the same place. And so I used to play clarinet a little bit, so I learned the song on the trombone and accompanied him, and we all had a really good time. So that's what that is. All right, so Sulitest. What we're going to talk about today, Ira asked me to assume people knew nothing, and I know we have about Sulitest. And I know we have a really great breadth of people on the call, some of whom are entirely new to Sulitest, some of whom have used it in their classes, some of whom are doing some research with it. But I thought in order to make sure we're all on the same page, it really is helpful to understand what the current tool is and where it came from and what it's based on. And even those of us who've been working on it for a while, a review is usually helpful. And so I'll do that. What is Sulitest? And then the second part will be a conversation about the 3 phases of evolution. What is currently available, what's being beta tested, and what's in future development. And then talking a little bit about applications and opportunities. And my primary goal here is to orient people enough to the initiative that you're able to evaluate the degree to which the current tools might be applicable for you in a variety of contexts, and to also help make recommendations for the evolutionary direction of the tool. We're in the middle of a review, which hopefully any organization, any resource regularly reviews what they're offering and tests that against what's needed. So we're in the process of doing that. And probably one of the most important things to know about this tool and the organization and the community is that it's a co-created effort. And a number of people on the call have spent a number of years actually developing the tools that currently exist, providing their significant insights into what's needed and how we can continue to evolve the tool to best meet people's needs. So with that, the quick background is that the original genesis of Sulitest was at Rio 20 in 2012, where it was identified that education really has a huge role to play. And there was a consensus that the Higher Education Sustainability Initiative, HESI, was interested in raising the core literacy and awareness around sustainability and sustainable development, and that there was really a need to develop some kind of measurement. So this is in alignment, as you know, with the Sustainable Development Goals, Goal 4, Target 4.7, which says by 2030, we want to ensure that all learners acquire knowledge and skills needed to promote sustainable development. And so this is the role that Sulitest is working to help fill. So this idea formed before the Sustainable Development Goals were issued. And now there's really been an alignment with Sulitest and the SDGs working to move everything forward together. The Sulitest is one of the 17 featured initiatives of the UN Partnership for SDGs. There is a wide variety of support. It's led by an independent NGO, but it has the support of over 40 international institutions and networks, such as UNESCO and UNEP, PRIME, UNDESA, and a whole variety of others. And what you can see in the construct on the bottom of this slide is that there's a senior advisory board that's comprised of people from a number of different international organizations. And there are partnerships with different regional and national expert committees so that we can move forward both on the international level and on the local level. One of the things that's really interesting is that in a relatively short period of time, Sulitest has been used in 62 different countries by over 700 different universities or corporations, and over 85,000 tests have been taken. So that's pretty encouraging. There's a lot of interest in this kind of a tool, And what we are really interested in doing is continuing to develop it so that it becomes increasingly robust, and more tools are developed that meet the needs that people express. So it's always sort of fun to see who's involved in this. And just so you know, the people really leading the way, supporting the Sulitest community is the Sulitest president, Jean-Christophe Caron, who's on the left in this picture. And the secretary-treasurer is Orléans de Camp, who's on the right. And I don't know French, so if I didn't say those well, I apologize. The two of them are very gracious in letting me attempt to pronounce their names. So this was actually at the UN High-Level Political Forum last July, where they presented their report, and we're getting ready to do that again for this July. So how is Sulitest defined? So, you know, many of the people on this call actually have done the important research. There was a lit review of the different work that's been done, referencing, David Orr and Debro and Stewart and Shea and Barnes and Winter and Horvath, et cetera, and looking at different approaches. And of course, one of the things that we find is that there's no one definition. So the Sulitest team, early in 2012, needed to attempt to come up with, well, what do they mean when they say sustainability literacy? And the determination was to define it in this way. It's three things. It's knowledge, skills, and mindset that help compel an individual to become deeply committed to building a sustainable future and allow him or her to make informed and effective decisions to this end. So it's a tall order to work to create a tool that helps to do that or measures that in some way, but that is the goal. This is the architecture. So initially, they spent a tremendous amount of time really thinking through what are the elements that need to be included in this. If one were to come up with a competency test, what would it need to measure? And what Jean-Christophe and Orléans and the rest of the team continually say is nothing is perfect, and this is an attempt to hit on some of the key elements that there seems to be some consensus are needed. So knowledge, skills, and mindset, again, are reflected on this slide. The knowledge is broken into 4 categories that you can see on the top, 4 themes. And this is going to be reiterated throughout this conversation today, this top section, because what we have right now is a tool that really is only focused predominantly on the knowledge piece. And we're really interested in the next phase, which would include more development on the skills and on the mindset. And I think Isabel might be on the call as well. And I know she's done some work on the mindset piece. So it's already underway. But one of the things that I want to make sure is clear in this conversation is an invitation for people who have knowledge and ideas to connect with us and help develop the tool in the way that's really going to be the most effective. So here's the deeper categories that are included. So this is a slide that covers that first section, the knowledge section. And on the left, again, you'll see the same 4 categories. So I'll mention those now. So sustainable humanity and ecosystems on planet Earth, global and local human-constructed systems, the transitions towards sustainability, and the roles that we have to play to create and maintain individual and system change. So part of what this gets at is what a number of the authors I referenced have said. And Deb Rowe is one of the people many of you know is very active on all of this, really emphasizing the need for change agent skills and the need for people to not only know, but to be able to act and be compelled to act. And that's where these three pieces come from: the knowledge, the skills, and the mindset. So these are the categories in knowledge. And I feel like going through each of these in detail isn't probably what we should do right now, although we can come back to this if that seems to be where we want to go in the Q&A section. So this section slide is the breakdown of the core themes within the skills section and the mindset section. And one of the things that I think is pretty interesting is how can we test skills? So at the top of this, it says knowledge of skills, because the idea was, well, we couldn't really test the skills themselves. But one of the things that I've been wondering about is, you know, the American Red Cross does a really great job on, for instance, their trainings. And they attempt to test skills by having scenarios and then using the computer keyboard and different drag and drop things and a whole variety of really unique approaches where they really are actually beginning to test the skills. So for myself, I sort of wonder, is there a way to innovate on that so that we could, in fact, have something that digitally can test skills, or at least some approximation of that. So the current tools that are available, so we call this the test. This is the primary element right now of Sulitest. So the original imagining was that a sustainability, you know, a comprehensive test would be developed, like a GRE or a TOEFL. And that's something that is still sort of in the vision. And if people come together to do that, that would be great. But again, that would have to include all three: the skills, the mindset, and the knowledge. So right now, what exists is the core international module. It's 30 multiple choice questions. There's then the option to add specialized modules, which are 10 multiple choice questions. And what I would say is that my first reaction is, well, you can't, you know, I'm not convinced you can test that much in a multiple choice question. But what you'll see when we go through these is what I found to be really compelling about this as an engagement and discussion tool is the learning statement and the diversity in the questions. So that's currently what's available. They also include a survey to collect some sociodemographic data. And currently there is a paid module that's available that allows for a customized module. So you could create something very specific to your class, for instance, to your school. In the event you used it outside of a university setting, like a community group, a Sierra Club chapter. I think there are a variety of potential opportunities there. So what's interesting is right now already, geographically, specialized modules have been created for the countries listed here. So Brazil, the UK, USA, South Africa, etc. And the international module has been reviewed by an international team, an international expert committee that has looked at the questions and felt that they were valid. The country modules, the more specialized modules, have teams within those countries that have created the test questions. So as we move forward from our current phase, phase 1, what currently exists, to our phase 2, which is beta testing and getting more robust, one of the things that we're working on is creating a more clear sort of set of qualifications and a more clear set of rules around how the different questions within each country might be created, so that we can really, again, continue to improve the robustness of these things and the consistency. A specialized module available on a topical is UNDESA has created an SDG module. In process right now is an SDG module for 7 for energy and also on 11. And there are lots of other opportunities for this too. So I'm again sort of jumping ahead to phase 2, which is the beta testing, what could happen. And part of what I think is really exciting and compelling is by having the international module, I'll go back, the international module, that core module, and then being able to add on specialized modules, that provides a real opportunity to create modules that are not only country specific, but they could be city specific, they could be topic specific, like change management or systems thinking. They could be SDG specific. They could really be any number of things. And that depends on what the community is interested in developing. And then some conversations with the team about how we provide those to the larger community in a way that clearly sort of reflects the level of robustness that has been applied to the creation of each module. So we're in the midst of a review of Sulitest and what it can offer. And this is one of the things that I think is really interesting and compelling. As some quick stats, the number of people who have used the current tool nearly doubled in the last year, so that was pretty interesting. And the total number, as I mentioned before, is up around 85,000 tests taken. Okay, so the current tool is focused on knowledge. It's the test. It's the international test plus the modules. So again, here are the 4 main themes. So what I'm working to do here in this conversation is be really clear about what currently exists and what the opportunities are with that, and what is in the process of being created, and what could exist if people were interested. So what currently exists is this, the 4 main themes within the knowledge test. So here's an example. I think it's really important. It's hard to talk in generalities. So let's get into specifics. So here's one of the questions. It says, what is the most widely used definition of sustainable development resulting from the Brundtland report in 1987? And it gives several different multiple choice answers that you can choose. And I'll just mention one of the feedback that we've gotten on this is that people have found it confusing to actually, within the question, reference a specific report. So there's a discussion about whether some of these specific things should be taken out. In this case, obviously, it would need to stay in, but. So you can choose one of these. Now, what is most useful, I think, what really struck me about this tool was that not only does it say what the expected answer is, but it also in the comments section has a learning statement. It gives the context and it will give you a link to sort of more in-depth reading. So the comment here is, this is a definition proposed in October 1987. There's a typo apparently, by the United Nations World Commission on Environment and Development in their report, Our Common Future. The complete definition included in the report reads, sustainable development is development that meets the needs of the present without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own needs, and includes the 2 core concepts. The concept of needs, in particular, the essential needs of the world's poor, to which overriding priority should be given, and 2, the idea of limitations imposed by the state of technology and social organization on the environment's ability to meet present and future needs. So what I liked about this is that it provides a simple question, some possible answers that people can think about, and then it provides sort of the fuller answer. And some of the learning statements have a sort of different tact to them. It's not just sort of repeating text from a report. So as an example, this one in 2012, how many people around the world have been victims of forced labor None is forbidden. B, approximately 2 million. C, approximately 20 million. D, approximately 200 million. Or E, I'm not sure. And as I'm sure a number of you are aware in designing a test, the idea of having something that you can choose that says I'm not sure and get a partial point for that has some level of credibility as compared to people just sort of guessing the right answer. So that's why E is there. And so here's an example of someone of not choosing the right answer. So ideally, there are no victims of forced labor, and that person chose A, but it is in fact approximately 20 million people. And again, there's a learning statement here that I won't read through. But one of the things that is important to me about this test is it's not just about environment, because we know that sustainability goes beyond environment. Although often in the United States, when you say sustainability, people default to just environment. So these questions, one of the things I think these questions is really great about doing is just by taking the 30 questions, it emphasizes to people that it's not just environment, that it's a variety of things. And that experience in and of itself gets people thinking in a different way. So here's one last one, more about economy. So among the following statements, there are 3 are related to a linear model based on production and consumption, and only 1 relates to a circular economy. So, and the answer is the objective of this model is to produce goods, which of these statements relates to a circular economy? The objective of this model is to produce goods and services while limiting the consumption and waste of raw materials, water, and energy sources. So those are the kinds of questions. And then the results come up in this format for the candidate. There's an overall score, and then there's a score within each of the 4 categories that you've now seen a few times. Global and local human constructed systems, role to play, sustainable humanity and ecosystems, and transition towards sustainability. And what's pretty neat about this is that in this example, what you can see are these funny shapes. And what the shapes are is, there you go. It shows your own, your score, and then it shows what the worldwide score of the people who've taken the test so far got. And then if, for instance, your class is taking it, it shows you what the average of the class was. So it's just sort of an interesting comparison for yourself about, okay, I scored really well on this element. I didn't score as well on that, whereas the rest of my class did score really well in that category. It's just sort of interesting information. Again, great fodder for conversation. And I think one of the ways in which this tool can be used really well is to just ask people after they take it, if you use it in a class, for instance, just say, what struck you? What surprised you? And that in itself allows people to talk about the thing that most resonated with them. And of course, as we all know, when you get your heart involved, that's what gets people engaged. If it's purely about stats or it's purely about right answers, that doesn't really move the ball forward as much. But getting the heart engaged and getting people talking about what they found interesting, what they were inspired by, what they were concerned about, is the kind of thing that gets people engaged in sustainability in a way that can begin to make a difference. So I included in here slides that folks can look at later, again, if you look at the recording. But this shows you, I'm not going to go into a lot of detail here because there are plenty of other things to cover. But this shows you what the examiner gets. The examiner gets the totals, the results per candidate, the results per question, and the results per tag that are in the matrix and the SDGs. And there's also an opportunity, as I mentioned, to create a customized module. So really, if you haven't tried this yet, it's actually pretty fun. I mean, I've I've had a fair bit of exposure to this sort of stuff, and I have to admit that when I convened a team of students a little over a year ago at the Harvard Kennedy School, actually it was beyond. It was a handful of students across Harvard actually, and we were all nervous to take it because we thought, well, what if we don't do very well? It's going to destroy our credibility. But it's really interesting. And I'm sure everyone actually will do fine. But the score doesn't matter. The point of taking it is to experience the tool. There's not a time limit, so you can take notes about things that you find interesting. And taking it will give you the experience so that you can evaluate its potential usefulness to you as a teacher in a variety of contexts. And also, we're very interested in hearing recommendations of ways to improve it. So one thing I should clarify is that the 30 international questions are chosen from a database. They're randomly selected from a database. And all the questions are tagged according to that matrix that we saw and according to the SDGs. So there's a variance of samples that are included in each test that cover all the different topics. So if you like, you can take your phone and take a picture of this slide. I created a test session if anyone wants to try it out. And the directions are at the bottom here about what you would need to do to be able to experience the tool. And it's pretty quick. It'll probably take 20 to 30 minutes with the 50 questions, probably less. The one I created uses both the international module and I chose the USA optional module, just so you could get a sense of what that could look like. All right, I'll give you one more second to take a photo and then I'll switch slides. All right, one of the other things that exists that I want to highlight is a quiz, and it allows you to do a gaming format with 10 questions and with limited time. You give 30 seconds or a minute for each question. It comes up on the screen. You break people into teams. They answer on their computer or on their phone, and people find that a really fun, engaging way to do this too. So you can either have a slightly more comprehensive experience by having people take the test modules, and then you'll get results that as a teacher you can sort of review more in terms of what kinds of questions people were getting right and wrong, and where, if anywhere, there seems to be a particular hole that you might want to address in your class. And this is a great thing in class. It sort of gets people engaged right off the bat. It would be fun to do this in this session, but to take 10 or 15 minutes to do this would take up too much time. But we will offer it as an option at the workshop at the SCC Faculty Conference on June 25th. And it's really fun and easy. So, all right, so that concludes the sort of initial background, the genesis, what is Sulitest, the genesis, the fact that it has broad support in its current state and for the vision, that it's meant to be both international and have the ability to localize for sort of more precise applicability. The idea that the intention is to include and develop tools for knowledge, skills, and mindset. And you saw sort of how it works right now. So what I'd like to move into is where we're headed, what's happening. So 3 phases of evolution. The currently available stuff, phase 1. What's being beta tested, phase 2. And what's available for future development, phase 3. So phase 1, you like this bright orange? That'll wake you up. Okay, so the current phase, what's currently available is the International Core Module Test, which you just saw a few questions from, the country-specific modules, the customizable module option, the quiz, and we're beginning to coordinate the researchers who are working on Sulitest questions. And the first convenience of that will be June 15th. And so those researchers who we're aware of, who are doing research related to Sulitest and the questions it uses, either within their class context or the big database, the international database, which is provided to anyone who asks. Obviously, the data is anonymous, etc. But the International Collaborative Strategy Session will happen June 15th, which is really exciting. To be able to get people together and see where there are overlaps in terms of interest for research, where the greatest needs are, and see the degree to which there are synergies and alignment. What I can say right now is, as you saw from those test questions, and I mentioned before, experts and have co-created these questions, and people have found them to be valuable. The next question is, how do we analytically show a robustness? And so we've convened a team right now. Myself and Michelle Merrill and Mike Jansen and Brandon Verhoff are conducting a small experiment to test a methodology that we've created to compare 4 short essay questions and the responses of those. And those questions represent the 4 categories. Again, those 4 categories keep coming up, the 4 categories for which scores are provided to someone who takes the current multiple choice Sulitest. And so what we're working on is a methodology to compare the results. And what we know already is that, for instance, Brandon Verhoff's PhD used face validity and criterion validity techniques in follow-up in-person interviews with 32 students who took the multiple choice Sulitest. And what he found in that limited sample was a correlation between students who scored high on Sulitest, the multiple choice test, and those who were assessed as having high sustainability literacy through his interview process. And similarly, his assessment was that students with low Sulitest scores also had low sustainability literacy as assessed through interview. So that very simple correlation got us thinking. It's like, well, let's test this further. So we're in the process of just piloting this methodology. We should finish our first little investigation within the week, and from there we'll figure out sort of the best steps moving forward, and if that's the right methodology, and if we should work to apply it more broadly across the U.S., globally, in select countries. Again, what the best research technique seems to be. And one of the things that is clear in terms of developing all this is that more people who are deep on psychometrics would be great additions. All of us are pretty solid on the analytic piece, but psychometrics is an expertise of itself. So as we think about moving towards a competency test in phase 3 potentially, those are the kind of skills and people that would need to be engaged for that element to reach fruition. And again, this is meant to be an invitation for people to think about what skills and interests you have that you might want to engage in. The current, phase 1 here, the current opportunities are these things listed, which can be great for class discussions, to give you some input on your courses and where you might want to emphasize, put more emphasis given your current class. They can be used to raise awareness across your class, your team, faculty, etc. And for researchers, there is just a tremendous amount of opportunity with regards to research. So at KEDGE, they have indeed used the current version in a variety of ways. Testing people as they enter, in an intake session with 25,000 students a year. One of the things I think for phase 2 that also is really exciting is creating customized modules, as I mentioned before. And here at the bottom are listed a few things that might be interested: supply chain, entrepreneurship, sustainable finance, etc. So phase 2, the beta testing, what's happening now, as I mentioned already, more modules might be really interesting. This is intended to be a global tool. So in addition to more countries, more committees in countries creating country-specific modules and others, we really want to make sure this is accessible to as many people as possible. So translations, both of the actual text, but also making sure things are culturally relevant. In order to really provide an opportunity for as many people as possible to provide input and to collaborate, we're also in the process of beta testing a collaborative platform. So you can kind of think like Wiki, just in terms of the ability to get people across sectors to work together. And the opportunity there could be for people to either provide a draft question, and then other experts in that area would review that and tweak it, and then it would sort of go up through a review process. Or it could be an opportunity for someone that feels like there's a core thing that's missing to make that comment, and for other people then to say, oh, I know how to do that. I have some ideas about that, and to respond to that request. So this is sort of a pretty exciting concept. And, if there are people on the call who are particularly knowledgeable about that, the elements involved in that, and also elements involved in this kind of digital organizing, this kind of co-creating ideas about how we could best, do the verification of the quality of the questions as it moves up the chain. Those kind of things. That would be really fun. And another thing, the last thing on this list here is the participation badge. So corporations in particular have been asking for a certificate. And so we don't know, that the analytic testing hasn't been done on the current version of the Sulitest, the tool, the international multiple choice questions, to know if we can say that there's content validity. It's certainly a good tool for conversation and engagement, and it certainly tells you something. It certainly gives you, if everyone scores a 0 or everyone scores 100, or it certainly gives you some good information. But the degree that it sort of comprehensively tests sustainability literacy is something that we want to more robustly look at. So for now, what we are thinking is offering a participation badge. So if a corporation, for instance, has their employees take this in a test mode, meaning a limited condition, and they want some kind of acknowledgement for having done that, then maybe a participation badge might be relevant. And this is a current conversation. So again, people that have experience and interest in that, really welcome your thoughts. And then for phase 3, future development, potential future development would be, a robust sustainability competency test potentially, but that would need to include knowledge, skills, and mindset. So we need to figure out a way to do that. And if we actually created a robust test that we were all confident in, then we could potentially offer a certificate. So heading towards conclusion, the success really is driven by the co-creation, the tremendous amount of energy and expertise that people have contributed so far, the tremendous enthusiasm of international organizations and local organizations and individual people. I think we have a common mission, which is to really raise awareness and action on sustainable development, and that we want this to be a community project, with the understanding that it'll probably never be perfect, but that focusing on cooperation is really what we're looking at, and very much interested in innovation and ideas that help move things forward. So in review, it's what we covered: the genesis and support, the fact that Sulitest is international localized, that it needs to include three things: knowledge, skills, and mindset. We reviewed how it worked. We went over the 3 phases of evolution, possible applications, and some opportunities for engagement. So I hope that did give you a general overview of some of the moving parts, and love to hear some recommendations about the evolutionary direction of the tool. So let me open it up now and hand it back to Ira for Q&A.
Thanks so much, Brooke. You did a great job in explaining the genesis, the current status, and the future possibilities for Sulitest. I know it helped me understand the state of play much, much better. And I encourage those who are with us to post questions and comments in the chat box so I can tee them up for Brooke. We've had a couple of questions, comments come in. Your colleague, Michelle, has asked you to further address how people can get more involved in Sulitest research and if there is support for research and development.
Oh, good cueing, Michelle. So yeah, so clearly, in order to create a comprehensive test, right, it's going to require some real expertise, some great staffing, which will require 2 things, right? Some people, some expert people. And so if there are folks who have those skills and expertise who would like to volunteer, that would be tremendous. And I believe I can go back up to the top where my email address is. So one way you can get in touch about that is to just email me directly. So the bottom right is my email address. And so we're looking for people who, again, have sort of psychometric skills and are interested in engaging. Yeah, so that would be the short answer of that. If also of funding sources, people or projects that you think are in alignment with this, that you think we should all be hooked up together, then please let us know that too.
So following up on that, a handful of similar questions. First part, so what were the most significant outcomes from your meeting in Marseille? And secondly, with the meeting that's coming up next week with the researchers, do you expect that there'll be an opportunity to debrief on that or post the outcomes?
Oh, interesting. Well, one of the things that I'm personally really interested in is creating elements of the website that allow for updates like that. That's currently not a great place for that. But if people are particularly interested in the outcome from that, I think what I would ask is that you email me directly, since I don't want to spam people. Or I could send an update to this group, so whichever seems to be the correct way to proceed. And Ira, I think you know better probably what the correct way is. So the outcome of the meeting in Marseille, so that was a convenance of the Senior Advisory Board and of key users, and I just sort of folded the outcomes of that into this presentation. So the outcome is we're doing an active review. that really is the outcome. And what I'm proposing is that we have work groups on different topics, like creating tools that some of the current instructors who are using Sulitest as either a benchmarking tool or a discussion tool, they have offered to work with me to write up their programs and sort of how they're using it and what they're doing and what kind of materials they're using. And the goal would be that by the end of the summer, we will have compiled some of those, preferably much earlier than that, but I don't want to raise expectations and then not meet them. So we'll just say by the end of the summer, before the school year starts, to have those kind of tools available on the website. Sorry. The other outcome was to continue to move forward with the research piece. Another part of the outcome was to do the sort of annual review of the questions and make sure that there aren't questions that either everyone's missing or everyone's getting, because of course we want to get rid of those that really aren't telling us anything or aren't very useful. So that was really the outcome, that we're in the middle of a review process. Different members of the community are offering to engage in working groups. I'm following up directly with those people to see, where their skill sets are and where they can be most additive. And what I would say to you is that if you have things that you feel are relevant to this, that are important to you, that are interesting to you, if you want to email me about those topics, then we can work to sort of hook you in wherever it's most relevant. So that would be the shorter answer. Yeah, that would be the shorter answer.
Thank you. I guess somewhat related to updates and revisions, and maybe also in terms of is there a existing mechanism for those who use the Sulitest to immediately provide feedback on questions that they view as problematic, for example, not as clearly phrased as they could be? And I raise that in particular because even the one example question that you posted earlier, which to many seemed very straightforward about the Brundtland definition, in my view, the way it was phrased was a bit misleading. So if someone like me, for example, wanted to suggest an improvement on a Sulitest question, how would they go about doing it?
On the website, there is an email address. I'm guessing it's something like info@sulitest.org, but there's a contact link on the website. And or you could, since my email is right here, if that's easier, brooke.suter@gmail.com. You could send it to me and I could forward it to the right person. And that's why we're working on the collaborative tool. The beta piece, the phase 2, that's one of the really important things, is to really simplify access, to make the quiz easier to get to change the business model so that currently everything is free. I should rephrase that. Currently, the international module and the optional country modules are free, which is fantastic. And that's one of the things that draws me to this, the open source aspect, the free aspect, the idea that everyone involved in this is really working for positive change. But it's time now as a maturing organization to also figure out how to make the organization itself sustainable. So that's part of the conversation now too. What should a business model look like? But the goal is to make sure that the most fundamental tools are available to everyone, meaning they're free, ideally, meaning that they're in their language, meaning ideally that there's a local module for people as well. So I think the current tool is very valuable, And I think the vision for the future and the things that are being worked on right now are going to probably make it 4 times more valuable. So yes, any ideas, input, either go to the website and identify that contact link, or for now you can send it to me and I'll just forward it.
Very good. A few more questions and comments have come in, so we'll continue on for a few minutes longer, if that's okay, Brooke. The one comment that came in from Paul Bartlett, and he posted it to all in the chat box, so you might be able to read it. Listeners may be able to read it directly. Student feedback criticism, too many questions, too specific quantitative subdomain knowledge, quote unquote facts, not enough on big ideas and key concepts, theme evaluation, too few questions to be accurate, and some wild results pre to post in some categories. So I don't know if you had a reaction to that, Brooke, or if that's consistent with some feedback that you've already heard.
Well, that's consistent with the feedback that got me involved, actually. So, over a year ago, when I convened students and we all took the test, that was our assessment as well. And so my thinking was, okay, and Peter, thank you so much for those comments, because knowing that that's the universal feeling is very, very helpful. And so my response was to find the president of the organization, which was JC, and email him and say, I have some feedback. Do you want it? And what really impressed me, I kind of expected him to say, well, no, not really. But what he said was, oh, absolutely. And then I provided those comments and some others. And, in my opinion, things that needed to be improved if it wanted to be more than just a general discussion tool, but again, to improve the robustness of it. And he was very receptive and interested. So of course, the response then from any smart leader is, you're right, how can you help us do that? So now I've been working to sort of help them move things forward. And again, this convenience in Marseille a couple of weeks ago was really about bringing it to the broader community and saying, is this what you think too? In which case, let's start the next phase of development, and let's figure out what that needs to look like. And let's figure out who the people are who can engage, that can help us make it better, increasingly better, and that's really the goal. So Peter, I'll pull down those specific comments again and make sure that they're incorporated. I would be really curious about the wild results piece. I'm not entirely sure what you mean by that. So if you have any further feedback on that, I'd be interested to hear it.
Very good. Let me move on to another comment that came in earlier in the presentation from Gabriel Evgerinos, and he was asking specifically for you to talk more about the in-process work for SDG 7 on clean energy. And the reason he's asking, and I'm going to read this because part of what we do at Sustainability Curriculum Consortium is to disseminate information about useful resources. I'll just give a shameless plug for Gabriel here and say that his company, Energy Mentors, is actively involved in educating universities and companies on the transition to clean energy, and interlinks with other SDGs through guest lectures, internships, dynamic simulation models, and negotiation role-playing models. So I hope it did justice to that, Gabriel. And Brooke, if you have any thoughts on the SDG 7 work, that would be great.
Sure. So that was an initiative of the UN agency. And they had originally taken responsibility for creating the questions. And my understanding is that right now it's paused. And one of my recommendations as the the strategist was that we needed to sort of pause on a number of things and really, you know, as Peter mentioned, sort of look at some of the look at the current tools and see what tweaks we want to make to those to make them stronger, and then you know, with limited volunteer power, right, focus on that, and then really move forward with some of these other things. So, but I will say, Gabriel, if you, I guess I can get your email from Ira, and we can certainly hook you up to JC, who can let you know what the current status is of that. But again, to me personally, this possibility of these modules that can address more specific things is one of the most exciting elements of this, and makes it most possible for people to use it in a variety of classroom and other contexts. So if your question is about offering to help come up with questions, that would be great.
Thanks, Brooke. And a couple final questions and comments as we begin to wind down here. Tom Baxter has posted, you mentioned that the test has no time limit. Could you add that as an option, for example, the examiner could prescribe a time limit for their students? And he thanks you for the great explanation in this webinar, Brooke.
Tom, you made it. And Tom and his team recently won a sustainability award, so congratulations. There is an option for an exam mode, so that does in fact exist. When I said there was not a time limit, I actually just meant for the session that I created for this group. So yes, that does exist, exam mode.
Very good. And a further comment from Paul Bartlett, who had offered the student feedback criticism. Paul goes on to explain that he uses Sulitest with other instruments, qualitative case study midterm, and final reflection essays. This way, he says, Sulitest can be used as self-assessment awareness.
Oh, that's fantastic. So Paul, if you're willing, I'm gonna follow up with you, because I think that kind of approach is the sort of thing that we want to provide to other educators, so they can think about different ways that the tool as it stands can be useful, while everyone works together to continue to develop it.
And the final point I'll raise is that people do want to hear more. And as I mentioned in the opening, but some people may have missed it, you will be doing a Sulitest workshop at the upcoming Sustainability Curriculum Consortium Faculty Conference in Pittsburgh. That workshop will be on Monday evening, June 25th. And of course, this was intentionally done because we know that that will be a big draw, and we want more people to come to the SCC Faculty Conference. But again, since we're a big tent and we're also a corporate member of ASHE, I will note that Margaret would like you to do a Sulitest workshop at the ASHE conference in the fall. How about that?
Well, there we go. We'll get everything covered. And again, there are a number of people who, I mean, hundreds of people who have just contributed tremendous amounts of thought and energy and effort into this. So yeah, Margaret, I'd be happy to do that, and we can talk more. And probably one of the things that we should do is, one of the things in development is a description. So we can really have more people getting this kind of information. And it doesn't need to be just a handful of people, because there are many people who have been very, very involved. So this is very exciting. Thank you all. It was really wonderful for you to take out time to listen to this. And Ira, and I think just everyone has been doing such amazing work, and so many of us volunteer so much time. So I sincerely want to thank you. And the degree to which that you are interested in sort of learning more, considering if there are ways in which you want to contribute skills or ideas, I'll work with Ira to figure out how to best follow up with people and what seems to be most appropriate.
Thanks so much, Brooke. Really was an excellent presentation and a rich discussion that followed. Really appreciate it. So thanks for my behalf and for the Sustainability Curriculum Consortium. And a final word, again, I remind folks that the faculty conference agenda is posted on the SCC website, curriculumforsustainability.org. And what we'd like to do, even if you can't make it to the faculty conference, if you think the agenda looks interesting, please spread the word to your friends, family, and colleagues. And anyone who's interested in curriculum and faculty development, despite the title of the conference as the faculty conference, we are also welcoming grad students, sustainability directors, and even a stray provost or two. So please do help us spread the word. Thank you very much, and thanks again, Brooke.
Thank you.